Detectives Sarah Morgan and Javier Ortiz had spent years chasing online predators, but nothing had prepared them for the scale of what they were about to uncover. In the shadows of the internet, a hidden network thrived, exploiting children across continents, and every lead they followed pulled them deeper into a dangerous digital maze. As the clock ticked and the criminals adapted, Sarah and Javier realized this mission was not just about arrests. It was a race to save lives before it was too late. In the quiet corners of the internet, a world existed that few people could even imagine. Hidden behind layers of encryption, proxy servers, and passwords, a network thrived where anonymity was absolute and morality was abandoned. Within this dark web, users communicated in coded language, trading content so horrifying it seemed unreal to anyone outside of that shadowy world. Law enforcement agencies had known about such networks for years, but penetrating them was nearly impossible. Traditional policing methods, the ones that worked on physical streets and neighborhoods, had little effect in these digital mazes. Every attempt to track activity was met with a wall of encryption, disappearing IP addresses, and dead-end accounts. The scale of the problem was staggering. It wasn't just isolated incidents or a handful of perpetrators. The network spanned multiple continents, operating 24 hours a day. Users moved between platforms, switching accounts at the slightest hint of surveillance. Some even used sophisticated software that could erase entire conversations automatically after they were sent, leaving no trace. It was a place where criminals felt untouchable, a virtual playground where consequences seemed distant and unlikely. Then came the turning point. A series of disturbing images began circulating across various hidden platforms. Analysts noted patterns, connections, and digital fingerprints that suggested a highly organized operation. It was not random or chaotic. It was calculated. Certain users appeared to be coordinating, sharing information on how to exploit vulnerabilities in law enforcement tracking, trading tips on remaining undetected, and exchanging content that was meticulously categorized. The network had rules, hierarchies, and a chilling sense of order. Recognizing the urgency, law enforcement agencies worldwide formed a coalition. The FBI, Europol, and several local cybercrime units pooled their expertise, creating a special task force that would operate in secrecy. They called it Operation Soteria Shield. The mission was clear but daunting. Dismantle the network, identify the perpetrators, and protect the victims, all without alerting the criminals. Every digital breadcrumb was a potential lead, but following it required extreme caution. A single misstep could allow suspects to vanish before authorities could act. Investigators worked around the clock, analyzing data that was often overwhelming in volume and disturbing in content. Digital forensics teams sifted through terabytes of information, examining metadata, timestamps, and file paths to reconstruct the network structure. Analysts studied patterns of communication, looking for common points where suspects' lives intersected. It was painstaking, often frustrating work, with little room for error. Despite the challenges, the task force began to see glimpses of the network's hierarchy and reach. Small, seemingly insignificant details, an account name, a time zone reference, or a subtle coding system, provided critical clues. Investigators realized that they were not just chasing random individuals, but a coordinated operation that could have thousands of participants. The network was vast, complex, and dangerous, but for the first time, authorities believed they could unravel it. Every breakthrough in the investigation revealed another layer of the network's darkness. Each new lead carried both hope and risk, and investigators had to balance urgency with patience. The world outside remained unaware of the danger lurking in these hidden corners, but for the men and women of Operation Soteria Shield, every day brought the weight of responsibility. They were racing against an invisible clock, navigating a web of deception and confronting humanity at its most sinister. The stakes were high, and the consequences of failure unimaginable. The operation had begun, and the path ahead was uncertain. Each clue, Each digital footprint held the potential to lead to justice or to let the predators slip away into the shadows once more. The investigators knew that they were entering a world where every detail mattered and where the line between success and disaster was razor thin. As the investigation progressed, a clearer picture of the network began to emerge. The task force discovered that the perpetrators were not isolated individuals acting alone. They were part of intricate, tightly connected groups, each with its own methods, codes, and territories. Some operated in small, insular clusters, communicating exclusively with people they trusted, while others were part of larger, more sophisticated networks that spanned multiple countries. The web of suspects was far more complex than anyone had anticipated, and tracing their activity required careful attention to patterns that often seemed invisible to the untrained eye. What shocked investigators the most was the ordinary appearance of many of these individuals. They were not strangers living on the margins of society, but people who, in everyday life, appeared completely normal. Teachers, coaches, IT professionals, and office workers all appeared in the investigation's growing list of suspects. In public, they maintained lives of apparent responsibility and stability, but behind the screen, they led hidden lives that were deeply criminal. The duality of their existence made the investigation delicate. Any wrong move could tip off a suspect and allow them to erase evidence or disappear entirely. Digital footprints became the primary weapon for the task force. Analysts began to piece together patterns from seemingly mundane details, metadata from images, the timing of messages, IP traces, and even minor linguistic quirks. Each clue was a thread that, when connected with others, revealed relationships and hierarchies within the network. Some users held positions of influence, coordinating content, instructing others, and maintaining order, while lower-level participants followed instructions, facilitating the spread of illegal material. Identifying who held which position became crucial for planning future arrests. The network itself was designed to evade capture. Suspects relied on encrypted messaging platforms, temporary email addresses, and virtual private networks that masked their locations. Some used multiple devices and fake identities, switching seamlessly between accounts to confuse investigators. The task force had to employ the latest in cyber intelligence technology and techniques, constantly adapting to the changing tactics of the criminals. Each step forward required precision, patience, and a deep understanding of digital behavior. In addition to uncovering the network, investigators began to identify the victims. Many were children who had been targeted repeatedly, often in multiple locations, making the urgency of the operation even more apparent. Protecting these victims became a top priority, as law enforcement realized that delays could allow further exploitation. Specialists in child protection and trauma worked alongside cybercrime analysts to develop strategies for intervention, ensuring that when arrests were made, the victims would receive immediate support. As the investigation deepened, the sense of urgency grew. Leads developed slowly, often requiring days or weeks of careful observation to confirm. Yet every breakthrough, no matter how small, revealed the scale and sophistication of the network. Investigators discovered hidden servers, encrypted file-sharing systems, and even coded instructions on how to avoid detection. The realization that this network had existed undetected for years underscored both the difficulty of the investigation and the importance of Operation Soteria Shield. Despite the challenges, the task force continued to uncover connections between suspects, identifying previously unknown groups and individuals involved. The duality of the perpetrators, their seemingly ordinary public lives versus their secretive criminal activity, added a psychological complexity to the investigation. Every revelation deepened the task force's understanding of the network, but also heightened the stakes. The operation was no longer just about gathering evidence. It was a high-stakes struggle against an organized, calculating system built to exploit the most vulnerable. The web of suspects revealed a chilling truth. This network was not a collection of random offenders, but a coordinated, multi-layered operation that had adapted to evade authorities for years. Each new piece of information confirmed that dismantling it would require patience, ingenuity, and unwavering vigilance. The task force knew they were racing against time, moving carefully through a maze of deception and secrecy, aware that any misstep could allow the network to continue its dark operations undisturbed. Every day brought new discoveries, new challenges, and the constant reminder that the stakes could not be higher. As the task force delved deeper into the network, the investigation evolved into a high-stakes digital cat-and-mouse game. Every lead seemed to open a new layer of complexity, and each breakthrough was met with new obstacles. Suspects were not merely hiding behind passwords or fake accounts. They had built entire infrastructures to remain invisible. Encrypted servers, anonymized networks, and disposable digital identities made tracking them feel like chasing shadows. Every move required careful planning, because the slightest misstep could alert the network and allow its members to vanish without a trace. Analysts began to map the network with painstaking detail. Patterns of communication, timestamps, and metadata were scrutinized for hidden connections. Investigators noticed that some suspects operated in a methodical, almost ritualistic way, sharing content and instructions according to strict schedules. Others relied on automated systems that deleted evidence after a few hours or minutes, leaving investigators with only fragments of information. It became clear that the network had evolved in response to law enforcement efforts, constantly adapting to avoid detection. Each new strategy developed by the suspects required the task force to innovate in response, using advanced cyber intelligence techniques to anticipate their moves. The discovery of a hidden server in Eastern Europe marked a critical turning point. The server acted as a central hub, storing thousands of illicit files and detailed records of transactions between users. Analysts realized that this single location could provide evidence of the network's hierarchy, its scale, and the identities of key operators. However, accessing it required extreme caution. Any attempt to breach the server without preparation could trigger security measures, alerting suspects and resulting in the loss of invaluable evidence. Teams spent weeks studying the server's architecture, learning how to navigate its defenses, and devising a plan to extract information safely and systematically. At the same time, the investigators faced psychological challenges. The material they were analyzing was deeply disturbing, and the sheer scale of exploitation weighed heavily on the teams. Specialists rotated responsibilities to prevent burnout, and mental health support became a critical component of the operation. Despite these pressures, the task force remained focused, driven by the knowledge that every breakthrough brought them closer to stopping perpetrators and protecting victims. New connections continued to emerge. Patterns of behavior indicated that some suspects were coordinating across borders, sharing methods and tips for evading detection. Others were part of isolated cells that acted independently, but still contributed to the network's overall reach. Mapping these relationships revealed a hierarchy. At the top were a few key orchestrators who controlled content distribution and set rules, while lower-level participants facilitated sharing and recruitment. Understanding this structure became vital, as it allowed the task force to prioritize targets and plan coordinated interventions. The investigation also highlighted the ingenuity of the perpetrators. They exploited technological loopholes, used anonymization tools, and developed contingency plans in case of exposure. Yet, for every tactic the network employed, investigators found countermeasures. By combining digital forensics, behavioral analysis, and international cooperation, the task force steadily closed the gap. As the operation unfolded, the sense of urgency intensified. The longer the network remained active, the greater the risk to children worldwide. Investigators knew they were in a race against time, navigating a constantly shifting digital landscape where every decision mattered. Each step forward brought new insights, but also new challenges, underscoring the complexity and danger of dismantling a network designed to evade justice at every turn. The pursuit demanded patience, precision, and unyielding determination, with the knowledge that success could save lives and bring long overdue accountability to those who had hidden in the shadows for too long. After months of careful preparation, the task force reached a decisive moment. They had gathered enough evidence to move forward with arrests, but the scale of the operation required precise coordination. Suspects were spread across multiple countries, each with their own legal systems, time zones, and law enforcement protocols. Any miscalculation could tip off even a single suspect, jeopardizing the entire effort. Teams spent weeks planning synchronized raids, ensuring that every move was carefully timed to prevent suspects from destroying evidence or fleeing. On the day of the operation, law enforcement agencies executed a series of coordinated strikes. Agents moved simultaneously in 5 different countries, targeting homes, workplaces, and safe houses identified during the investigation. The raids were swift and precise, designed to catch suspects off guard and minimize the risk of collateral damage. Teams entered buildings, secured digital devices, and detained individuals who had spent years hiding behind the safety of their screens. In some cases, suspects were taken by surprise in the very environments where they had maintained seemingly normal lives, from quiet suburban homes to bustling city apartments. Digital forensic teams worked alongside the arrest units, immediately securing computers, smartphones, and storage devices. Every device became a critical source of evidence, containing records of communication, transaction logs, and encrypted files. Analysts worked tirelessly to extract data without compromising its integrity, knowing that each piece could be pivotal in linking suspects to crimes and establishing the network's full extent. Servers hidden in other countries were accessed through prearranged international agreements, allowing investigators to trace additional participants and connections. The arrests revealed the disturbing depth of the network's operations. Suspects had exploited children repeatedly, often targeting victims in multiple locations and using methods designed to avoid detection. Some had maintained long-term operations, meticulously documenting their actions and exchanging instructions with others in the network. The scale of the exploitation shocked even experienced investigators, highlighting the need for ongoing vigilance and international cooperation. Evidence collected during the raids also exposed the sophistication of the network. Coded communication, encrypted messaging platforms, and hidden storage systems had allowed suspects to operate for years without detection. Analysts discovered detailed instructions on avoiding surveillance, sharing methods for creating and distributing illegal material, and even guides for recruiting unsuspecting participants. Each discovery underscored the careful planning behind the network and the challenge investigators faced in dismantling it completely. The operation had immediate and far-reaching consequences. Over 70 individuals were apprehended in a single coordinated effort, sending a clear message to criminal networks worldwide that anonymity did not guarantee immunity. Victims were identified and provided with support, and authorities began the painstaking work of documenting and prosecuting the crimes. Courts faced complex cases, involving multiple jurisdictions and intricate digital evidence, but the arrests marked a significant step toward accountability. Even after the raids, the task force understood that the fight was far from over. Some participants had yet to be identified, and the technology used by criminals continued to evolve. The operation had struck a decisive blow, but ongoing monitoring, international collaboration, and technological innovation remained essential. For the investigators, the raids were both a triumph and a reminder of the persistent danger posed by networks that preyed on the most vulnerable. Each arrest brought relief, but also a sober recognition that vigilance could never waver in the ongoing struggle to protect children and bring predators to justice. In the months following the raids, the impact of Operation Soteria Shield became increasingly apparent. Courts across several countries began to process the cases, each presenting unique challenges. The evidence collected was extensive and detailed, but translating digital data into a narrative that could withstand legal scrutiny required painstaking effort. Prosecutors meticulously reviewed logs, communications, and metadata, connecting individuals to specific acts and demonstrating the structure of the network. The trials revealed the chilling duality of the perpetrators: ordinary people leading ordinary lives on the surface, yet deeply involved in systematic exploitation behind the screens. Victims and their families faced the long, painful journey of recovery. Support services, both local and international, worked to provide psychological care, counseling, and protection. Investigators maintained contact with social services to ensure that children removed from dangerous situations were placed in safe environments. Each step of the judicial process was accompanied by efforts to safeguard the well-being of those affected, recognizing that justice was not only about punishment, but also about recovery and protection. Operation Soteria Shield quickly became a model for future cybercrime investigations. The international collaboration, detailed digital forensics, and careful planning set a new standard in the fight against online exploitation. Law enforcement agencies studied the operation to understand how digital intelligence, combined with traditional investigative techniques, could dismantle even the most sophisticated criminal networks. The success demonstrated that persistent vigilance, global cooperation, and technological expertise were essential tools in combating crimes that spanned borders and jurisdictions. Despite the victories, the operation also highlighted the ongoing threat posed by online predators. While many perpetrators were arrested and convicted, the networks themselves were resilient, capable of adapting to new technologies and platforms. Investigators knew that vigilance could not be relaxed. Every breakthrough was accompanied by a reminder that criminals would continue to evolve. Continuous monitoring, education, and public awareness became central components in the fight to prevent exploitation before it could occur. For the task force members, the operation left a profound impact. The psychological toll of confronting such disturbing material was significant, but the knowledge that their work had saved lives provided purpose and motivation. The experience underscored the importance of teamwork, perseverance, and strategic thinking. Each member recognized that dismantling a network of this scale required more than just technical skills. It demanded patience, courage, and the ability to navigate a complex, constantly shifting digital landscape. The broader implications of Operation Soteria Shield extended beyond law enforcement. Communities, schools, and online platforms began reevaluating their own roles in protecting children. Educational campaigns and digital safety initiatives were implemented, emphasizing vigilance, reporting mechanisms, and awareness of online dangers. The operation demonstrated that while technology could be exploited for harm, it could also serve as a critical tool for protection and prevention when used responsibly. Ultimately, Operation Soteria Shield was both a story of justice and a warning. It showed the devastating impact of organized exploitation, the resilience and adaptability of criminal networks, and the power of coordinated, strategic intervention. The investigation and arrests brought relief to victims, accountability to perpetrators, and a blueprint for combating online child exploitation in the future. Yet it also reminded the world that vigilance, cooperation, and technological innovation must continue, as the protection of the most vulnerable remains an ongoing and urgent responsibility.